Okay, so this month's webinar is about how to get the best out of yourself and your team. Just a little bit about me. If you're joining for the first time, thank you so much for doing so. You can find out all about me down the side there. The two programs that I mainly run are around culture, help organizations to evolve their culture, and also to help them change their project management practices as well. If you'd like to find out more about me, you can do so. Any of the links down on the left there. And obviously, if you'd like to join the community, we'd love to have you on board. The other thing that I do is a regular podcast every 2 weeks where I get business leaders from around the world to share what works well for them, what they've learned about culture. There's so much to be learned from other people. I think we often forget that. One of the big reasons that I started the community was to really help people understand the different things that people have done wherever they are in the world, to help grow and evolve their culture. And so, it doesn't matter whether they work in an IT company. And to my latest one, which was released yesterday, introduced Catherine Wills, who has her own accessories company. Little things that we can learn, and with everything, even with this webinar, what I really encourage people to do is to make sure that you listen to lots of content, but to do something with it. Don't become a vacuum for content. Lots of people read lots of blogs, read lots of business books, but then do nothing with it. Me, myself, I try to read between 28 and 30 books a year, business books a year. I make lots of notes. So I use an application called Microsoft OneNote. I create a notebook called Books I've Read, and I make notes I create a different book for each one, and then make notes and some of the things that I can action, some of the things that I learn, some of the content I share in my workshops to help motivate and inspire others. It's the same with podcasts. Every time I listen to a podcast, I've got a little notebook next to me there where I write down some notes. So Culture Makers, get on and listen to the Culture Makers podcast. So this month's webinar is all about how to get the best out of yourself and your team. And so I want to share 3 steps to real successful and lasting change. And so I'm going to walk through each of these over the next kind of 35, 40 minutes. And then if you've got questions, please do pop them in the chat. And I will answer them afterwards. If you're watching a recording of this, please feel free to ask your questions on the community itself. Don't feel that just because the webinar's ended, you can't ask the questions. Of course you can. Just pop them on the community. So 3 steps to successful change. And people often miss the first one. I know that sounds a bit daft, but they do. Whenever organizations undertake any kind of cultural evolution, any kind of culture change, they forget that it involves personal change as well. In fact, the key to it is personal change and helping people overcome some of the kind of routines that they've got in, some of the bad habits that they formed, some of the attitudes they have, and the collective mindset, as you'll see. So being the best version of you is critically important. Secondly, it's making sure that you understand the component parts of what needs to change. Too many organizations are doing transformation programs, and they forget that the thing that's being transformed is the culture. So which elements of the culture need to be transformed? I joke about this a lot on stage, digital transformation. We're very good at the digital. We're rubbish at the transformation. We're very good at saying, here's a tool, let's put it in, but then kind of not doing the whole transformation. We're moving from this state to this state. And yet we employ change managers to help us to do that, but we don't give them the remit to be able to do that. And then the last thing is to really deliver with confidence, is to say, let's plan this thing properly, let's build a great team, and then let's stay disciplined and committed to delivering it in the way that we said. So you need all 3 of these things. You need to be great at all 3 of these things. Where transformation projects succeed is where people are 100% in to all of these, where everybody agrees that they need to tweak 1 or 2 things about themselves, that that they're not the perfect human being, that they understand the bits and pieces that are broken, and kind of why identifying and agreeing what we need to evolve to is critically important at the start, and then making sure that we address it throughout, and then actually kind of sticking to the milestones and delivering the hell out of them. So I'm going to walk through each of these 3 now, just to give you a sense of what it all means. So being the best of you. We're all human beings. We're all, kind of here to do the best that we can, or I like to think that we are. It feels like sometimes other people aren't, right? We've all been in that situation where you feel like you're being the best of you, but nobody is. The tendency there is then to drift and to join in with them. You definitely don't want that. What we want is for you to be the best human in the room. And I often say to people, your goal is to make your worst day better than everybody else's best day. That's what being the best version of you is. You also have to recognize that you can't be perfect and you can't be the best version of you all the time. That is completely unrealistic. And me personally, I like to think that I'm a realistic optimist. So I have positive views on the world, but I also recognize that I have my own days where either I'm tired or, I'm filled with self-doubt. Kind of call those my black dog days. And actually, I just need to take a break from whatever it is that I'm doing and myself and do something that recharges me. And so what we're talking about this course is emotional intelligence, the capacity to be aware of, manage and control one's own emotions and build relationships in a judicious way. And so that means kind of understanding who you are. Personality profiles are great at doing this. I'll talk about this in a second. And then also recognizing those emotions as you go, such that you can deal to it. So what do emotionally intelligent people look like? So 5 things for you to ponder while I just take a little sip of coffee. So number 1, they know what they're good at and what they're not. They understand the personality strengths. They understand their personality weaknesses. Not only that, they understand technically what they're good at. And I think, at the heart of self-awareness is that relentless kind of thinking that we're not done yet as humans. I met a guy earlier this week, he's 62. I said, all this stuff is good, but I'm thinking, what feasibly can I do in the last 3 years? And, and I said to him, I was like, you can be a positive force for good. I was like, you're not dead yet. You've still got a brain. You're still active. Relevance is key. Making sure you can do your job today here in 2020. You're not trying to do your job today, in 2015. Because the world is constantly evolving, constantly changing. And so I think recognizing that is good. And, and I talked at the start about blogs and books and podcasts and different things, different perspectives that you can gain to help you get better at you. The other thing that you can do here, and emotionally intelligent people are great at doing this, is asking for feedback. And consistently asking for feedback and saying, what's one thing that I could do differently? What's one thing that we as a team have learned? That's a conversation that they would have with their teams. I'll come to that in a second. That's point number 5. And they would write those down. They would action those things. And I think the more that you ask for feedback, the more resilient you become. So that helps as well. It helps you as a human to grow, evolve. Also recognizing that elevating other people is really important. So this is what highly emotionally intelligent, or EQ, high EQ people do, is that they admit that they're not the smartest person in the room and they invite other people in who might be. I often say if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. What you want to constantly be is challenged by other people and learning from other people. The second thing that high EQ people do is admit to their mistakes and learn from them. We all make mistakes. We're all human. And what was that line from Fleabag? That's why they put erasers on the end of pencils. Just been watching Fleabag recently. Totally addicted to it for a while there. That's why they put erasers on the end of pencils. And it's true. We all make mistakes. And so how are you learning from them? Not only that, how are you sharing them as well? I worked with one organization on their culture last week and, help them to create what we call a failure board, just a mechanism where we're writing what's gone wrong on a little card, sticking it on a wall so that people can see. So we're sharing them. But for you as a human, it's recognizing that from time to time, you'll get things wrong. And there really are 2 ways to approach it. You can either really beat yourself up about it and say, right, well, I got this wrong. I regret, I regret, I regret. Or else you can say, here's a learning opportunity. What have I learned from this entire episode? What's some things that I can write down? What's some things that I did in good faith that didn't really expect to happen? And what's a mistake that I just don't want to repeat? That sense of humanness is everywhere in our daily lives and in our teams. And we want to encourage humanness because it builds empathy, it builds connection, it helps to create great teams. And that humanness comes from understanding that we're good at some stuff and not good at other stuff. And where we fail at some stuff, the best thing to do is to share it. And I often see this in sports events where someone on a field will make a mistake. And the first thing the team will do is go and give them a pat on the back. It's tell them it's okay. That's what good teams do. They say, hey, listen, it was okay. We know you missed that penalty, but you're human. It happens. Let's move on. The third thing is, regardless of the situation that they're in, regardless of what they're faced with, they can control that feeling that they have. That's not to say that they don't feel things like anger and frustration. These are very human reactions, very human feelings, but they can control them. And that's the important thing. What we're trying to avoid, or what EQ people do, is there are no angry emotional outbursts that really disarm people and create that sense of fear. Because as soon as you have those emotional outbursts, you've kind of undermined the psychological safety, or the safety that you've created within the team. So people stop sharing, they stop talking, and they withdraw. And we don't want to do that. Because that affects the productivity of the team. So high EQ people, you've always got to remain calm. You've always got to remain balanced. You've always got to treat people with fairness. You can't suddenly be excited when your favorite person walks in the room, but when that difficult person comes towards you, can completely flip and change. Oh gosh, they really sucked the life out of me. You can't do that. What high EQ people do is they kind of project that one image. They manage that emotion regardless of the situation that they're in. And even if it's a crisis, what you want to be is that oasis of calm. That's not to say that your heart isn't going boom, 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 and you're trying to kind of process the information. But approachability is key. And so you want people to be able to come to you. And a way to do that is, whatever the situation, whatever's broken that needs to be fixed, is, kind of, you're that person that people want to come to, they want to share with, such that they can fix it. Number 4 is all about listening. And we're not very good at listening. And so the statistics show that we forget 50% of what we hear almost immediately. I'm wondering which of this is going to stick. And I mentioned active listening in the last webinar. Long term, we remember 25%. It's different in work versus home. Home conversations, we remember about 21% of those, whereas work, it's about 4%. Because there's too much noise often. And I think what high EQ people do is they don't stuff sentences with flowery words. They don't fill gaps. They don't fill time. They don't have hour-long meetings, just talk fests. And so that makes it easier for people to listen. Not only that, what high EQ people do is they remove distractions. And you'll see these people in meetings because they'll, insist that you put your phone away. They'll take people to task who aren't kind of present and in the room. And so you should be that person who's present, remove distractions. If you're working on a screen, turn away from the screen. If it's a laptop, close the lid. If it's a phone, turn the phone over, put it away, put it in a pocket. And then, you might want to make notes about what somebody's saying to you. If you're very good at listening, if you're very good at remembering stuff, great, you might retain it. If, like me, you're not, I would have a notebook where I would write things down. And that's active listening. And then, kind of processing that and then responding in a way that the other person appreciates. Sometimes active listening is just about listening. It's not about speaking at all. It's about, kind of being a bit of a shoulder to cry on, emotional sponge, if you were. Sometimes things do require a response, and it's about you listening and measuring what that response might be. But listening is key. for you to build relationships, to build empathy. Not only that, it creates that bond and connection. And, you know, the teams that I felt the greatest sense of belonging to were teams that listened to each other, not just about work, but about the home stuff too. Number 5, they create an environment where it's easy to share. Not only that, they create an environment where everybody gets a voice. Extroverts tend to dominate lots and lots of conversations. What they tend to do is kind of say, here's my opinion and I'm going to share it. And then I'm going to stick to it regardless of what other people might think. And, you know, what for great teams to function, in order for us to get change, what we need is lots of cognitive diversity. And so high EQ people recognize this, and they recognize that they have to pull different people in with different viewpoints. What we don't want is groupthink. Lots of people with similar views all telling each other that they're right. We need that divergence. We need to make sure that we create a kind of environment that's inclusive of everybody. And an effective conversation can last for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. It doesn't always have to be 30 or 60 minutes. You know, it's about making sure that everybody can share what's in their head about kind of the issue that you have, such that you get the resolution that you're looking for. Change is evolutionary, so we always want those ideas. And then the last thing is you can't be empathetic without understanding the emotions of other people. And so for me, I would write down what someone's personality was. Often I would run a personality workshop, and I do this with organizations now. I run a personality workshops, you know, and it just gives everybody that sense of who everybody else is, so that they can communicate accordingly. They can ask questions. It's easy to be more empathetic when you understand others' personalities, but crucially, you can respond to their emotion. You're better able to spot when someone's not being their self, and then you're able to respond, and you're able to say, "Are you okay?" You're able to spot when they're procrastinating, and they might need a kind of metaphorical kick up the backside. We all need that every now and again, that little bit of challenge. You can recognize when they maybe need some quiet time, when they maybe need to go somewhere else to do something. Or you recognize when actually what they need is a bit of energy around them, you know, kind of a few ideas to kind of lift and motivate them. So that's what emotionally intelligent people look like. Now on the community, there's an EQ room program, a program on emotional intelligence. It's called the EQ room, and it's got these 12 modules in there, which address all of those things about you being the best version of you. With all of the programs, they all have workbooks. They all have actions for you to take. So if you're a member of the community, if you're a member of the Culture Makers community, get on there, watch the programs, set yourself a goal. Don't try and do all 12 in one day, or at least don't try and take all the 12 actions. You know, pick one thing, then do that. Pick another thing, then do that, and really work through the EQ room in a structured way. So that's all about being the best version of you. The second part of change is understanding what actually needs to change. And so when it comes to the barriers, they're generally these 3 things. And this is from the IBM Making Change Work survey from a few years back. The number 1 barrier to change is changing mindsets and attitudes. Easily the most difficult thing to do, but absolutely it can be done. We shy away from this. We talk about the fact that culture change is hard, and we do that to give ourselves an excuse not to do it. Of course we do. Of course we do. The second is influence of corporate culture, what's deemed to be corporate culture. So that is culture coming down. We can't change because of what sits above us, and that's absolutely incorrect. What you need to do is to create something that people above or to the side or even below you kind of look at you and go, "What are you doing over there? That looks awesome." And having done that many times, it's so refreshing when people come to you and say, "How do I join your team? How do I join your team? You seem to be doing really great things." And then the third thing is a real lack of senior management support. And so we see these play out in cultures all of the time. And I think, you know, the root cause of a lack of evolution of culture is people fundamentally not understanding what it takes to change. So this is something that I produced recently, and I want to talk through this because I want to make sure that everybody understands it. Anybody who's involved in any kind of change management activity, obviously where you want to be is in the top right. So they're culture makers. These are people that recognize that to create any kind of lasting change, you need the involvement of as many people as possible, and that it takes time. One of the questions I get asked all the time at conferences is, how long does it take to change cultures? And people want it to take like 3 to 6 months. And whilst you can see the green shoots in 3 to 6 months, you're talking anywhere between 9 and 24 months, depending on how committed the people are to actually changing. So culture makers are in the top right-hand corner. They recognize that culture is the sum of everyone's attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, traditions, and skills. And that in order for cultures to change, what you need is to involve those people in the redefinition of culture such that they have ownership and accountability. Lots of people will say, oh, we don't have buy-in to our culture change. I'm like, okay, cool. What have you done to get buy-in? Oh, well, we sent an email telling people we're changing. We've sent everyone on a Microsoft Teams course. Yeah, won't work. And you can see there in the bottom right in the pleasers, sending everyone on the latest training course is something people do. I call these people pleasers. What pleasers do is they say, oh, what's going to keep people happy? What should we do? Certification courses are great for this. And I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that these things aren't part of lasting cultural change. So what you've got here is when these things are done in isolation. So agile is the latest thing most organizations are doing. We need to be more agile. Great. Should we address the behaviors of people, or should we send everyone on a Scrum course? Let's send everyone on a Scrum course. That's going to be quicker. And of course, it doesn't work. Agile is a mindset as much as anything else. So it's all about the behaviors of people, which you can see in the culture makers actively managing poor performance, poor behaviors, emotional intelligence training. So giving people the insights into who they are and how they need to change, how they need to grow, and how they need to evolve. Creating an innovation hub is something else pleasers do. And it takes a little time to stand up, mainly because we're kitting it out with comfy, funky furniture, and identifying the special people that need to work in an innovation hub. And of course, in isolation, it doesn't work. Of course, it doesn't work as part of a program. It might, but it's all of a sudden, it's nice. Let's send that to the innovation hub. And it's like, ooh, this is cool. And then kind of 6 months in, you realize they're doing things in the old fashioned way, or else old fashioned process and behaviors are holding them up. Rebranding similarly looks nice, looks a bit schmick. Isn't it good? We've got a new logo, doesn't change the culture, doesn't change people's perceptions of the culture. What changes people's perceptions of culture, who are external, is the way people talk about what happens internally. Similarly with process redesign, you may tidy up a few things here and there, but that doesn't address the people that still find their way around it. But at least people to the right of the line have acknowledged that cultural evolution takes a little bit longer, and it's worth doing these things even if they're a little bit harder. Whereas people to the left of the line generally don't. Now you've got those fixers in the top left-hand corner. So all the activity here that you see is about what are the short, sharp things that we can do that we believe will fix where we are right now. Now, by visible values enforcement, I think that's a really good thing that we can do. And, everything kind of above the line, you're getting more activity. There's more likelihood of change when you involve employees in it. So what we want is senior managers to demonstrate the values that we've agreed, the behaviors that we've agreed, the principles that we've agreed. But we don't want them to do it once and then never again. We want them to do it over a longer period of time. Sometimes I hear senior managers say, well, I'm practicing everything that we learned in the workshop a month ago. What are you doing? That's great. Providing you're still doing it in 6 months, 12 months, that's that length of time. There's still tons of people going on culture field trips and coming back with reports and ideas, and then they'll superficially change the names of teams and think that that's the way to do it. Let's change it to tribes, squads, and neighborhoods. Again, well-intentioned stuff. You don't need to send people to Scandinavia or the US or wherever you're going. So much stuff in the public domain. Not only that, you can go buy a copy of my book. Spend $30 on a copy of my book and read a bunch of great case studies of people around the world who've done it. Start there, and then identify teams as part of your continual learning program to go on culture field trips. Don't just do that in isolation. Say, right, we've been to Spotify, we know what they do, let's implement that. New policies are important. Diversity and inclusion is one such policy that organizations are doing right now. Say, right, we've got the policy, we're good to go. Well, yeah, you've got the policy, but actually what great cultures recognize is that if they get their hiring process right, you hire for things like diversity and inclusion. And so it's less about a policy and it's more about a way of thinking and a way of being. And of course, the engagement survey is a great way to kind of gain a perspective on where we are as a culture right now. Excuse me while I take a sip of coffee, where we are right now. But actually, if you don't do anything with that information over a period of time, it just becomes a point in time for someone in HR to say, our engagement score is 62%. We'll do it again in a year. Well, if you don't take any of the feedback that you've been given by employees, I guarantee it'll be less than 62% next year. So we see that as a way of fixing culture. Say, we've got the feedback, we know what we need to do. Great. Now you need to redefine the culture or build a continual learning program to address some of those issues that come up in the engagement survey. Now, of course, the organizations that fail at any kind of change are those ones that kind of do the things in the bottom left-hand corner, that kind of just produce some posters or put their values up on a wall or, kind of put their vision, on everyone's desktop. It's good, but, visions and values are lived, not laminated. You really want to bring those out. They should be part of a decision-making process. They should be part of hiring. Values provide emotional direction. Vision's a statement of the future, statement of where you want to go. And that should really excite people over a longer period of time. Simply slapping up the poster is just a reminder, but if people aren't living it, it's kind of pointless. Management defining the culture and operating model change, easily the most common things that happen when it comes to cultural evolution. There's a senior exec offsite, they come up with a bunch of stuff and then they try and force it down. Never works. Same with restructures. People think that just cutting out certain people and shuffling the chairs on the Titanic is a way of changing culture. It's not. Again, all these things are part of a cultural journey, but unless you do the tough stuff in the top right, you never ever succeed. Unless you get the staff to redefine the behaviors, the vision, the collaboration principles, unless you give them that insight into who they are, none of this stuff works. So you've got to really do the things in the top right there. And similarly, telling people that they have to change. And so, when we talk about understanding what needs to change, it's a combination of all of these things. What you'll have recognized if you're involved in any kind of change activity right now, you'll have recognized your organization somewhere and you're like, oh my gosh, that's us. Oh gosh, we're doing that right now. Oh no, I'm flying to, I don't know, Kansas next week to visit a company to find out what they do. It's all good stuff. I don't want you to think for 1 minute that it's not. But without understanding the fundamentals of culture, you can't grow, you can't change it. And again, as part of the Culture Makers program on the community, we created a masterclass to help you. What is culture? How do you know where you are? How do you spot where you are? How are you making sure that you apply that culture stuff at each of the team level? And so again, some modules. Now with these, I think that the kind of 12 modules is all about getting that very quick understanding, sharing it with your peers. You want to bring everybody up to your level of knowledge around culture. And everyone's got a different view of what culture is. For the 2-day culture workshops that I run, the first hour is a keynote of me telling people what culture is and getting them to share their stories of what they think it is. Because as soon as you get everyone's ideas, you realize the kind of complexity that we have within cultural definition, let alone culture itself. So getting on that same page is crucially important, and then making sure that we undertake the right activity. And then it's all about, okay, so I'm being the best of me. I understand what needs to change. Now we need to deliver it. And project management. And so, someone who was involved in project delivery for 20 years, the world is still shocking at delivering projects. And not everyone is kind of made to be a project manager. Not everybody has the skills to do it. We think that they do. We see it as development opportunities, right? Colin, you're going to manage this project. And then they get no training on how to be a project manager. And fundamentally, a project manager has three jobs: to build a team, to build a plan, and to deliver the project. Three jobs. Now, I'm making it look and sound really easy on this slide, and project management is one of the toughest jobs, because often you're taking people from different departments, trying to create a team out of them and inspiring and motivating them to work on this thing that they may or may not agree with, which is why building the team is crucially important. It's always the first thing that a project manager should do. As soon as a business case has been approved, and a project manager generally doesn't get involved in the production of a business case, once it's been approved, then the first thing they do is build the team. What I see happen, and kind of where I see projects failed, is people either jump to delivering the project straight away and then making the plan up as they go, just producing a task list because they think that that's what it is, or else they'll kind of build the plan on their own without involving a group of people. So they haven't done that high EQ thing of facilitating effective conversations and building the team. I work with some really large programs of work, and it takes 2 days for those guys to really build a team, to get that understanding. If you've got a team of, I don't know, anything over 40 people, it's going to take 2 days to really define the team culture that you need in order to build the plan. Now, there's this misconception that if it's an agile project, it does need a plan, and it does. Often it needs more rigor. Jim Highsmith, who's one of the original signatories of the Agile Manifesto. If you don't know about Agile, I suggest you kind of go away and Google it. I do cover it in the project leadership program a little bit. It's also in the project book. If you wanted to buy a copy of that, grab a copy of the project book. But go and just Google it, Agile, and what it is. Jim Highsmith is one of the original signatories of the Agile Manifesto that was produced in 2001. And the Agile Manifesto is all about being more human in interactions. It's not about shortcutting a process. And this is what Jim Highsmith said. He said that, if people think it's about less rigor, they're wrong. Often it's about more rigor, because you have to deliver in shorter sprints. And building a plan can take quite a while for larger waterfall projects. If you're working on a year-long project, the planning process should take probably about 3 months. But make no mistake, if you spent 3 months planning, the remaining 9 months would be super, super efficient, and you'll get through because you've identified up front what you need to do. If you only spend 2 weeks planning a 1-year project, you can expect lots and lots of firefighting along the way, lots and lots of pain, lots of anxiety, lots of stress, because that's what happens when you don't plan. You've created so much uncertainty for yourself. So build a team, build a plan, deliver the project, always in that order. But project managers often are appointed because of the level of technical expertise of whatever it is that's being changed, when project management really is a people and relationships business. And so in order to be great at project management, you have to do these three things. You have to be a really good leader, not a manager. You have to be a manager as well, but good managers can become leaders. Poor managers are never leaders. So they have to be good at leading. They have to be good at building team culture and maintaining team culture, but also they need to understand the technical skill set of being a project manager, not the technical skill set of whatever is being built. And project management has its genesis in construction and software development. And so there are lots of people who've got lots of technical knowledge about those things. So they're very good in the top right circle there, but not so good at leading and managing people, not so good at building and evolving team culture. So often when I work with organizations, and I'm working one in New Zealand, with one in New Zealand in a couple of weeks, and I said, what are you great at right now? And she said, we've got the best process. We've got the best framework. We've got the best tool set. We've invested $1 million in this great tool set, but no one uses it. And nobody using it is that leadership piece, is you being the best of you, understanding what you need to bring to the party and why using kind of tool set and framework and process is important. And also that culture to sort of say, well, as a team, this is how we're going to collaborate. This is how we're going to work together. These are the behaviors that we're going to demonstrate. So it needs to be all three of these things. You know, some project managers that I've worked with, they're very good at the leadership and culture. And this was me as a project manager when I started out in 2007. I was very, very good at being the best of me. I was highly self-aware and creating great teams. And I remember my boss said to me, you've been hired for your people and team building skills. He's like, but you couldn't plan your way out of a paper bag right now. And of course, he was absolutely right. I didn't know how to run a work breakdown structure. I didn't know how to break that work down into tasks. I didn't know how to set expectations, which is a bit of a process for you to follow in order to kind of make sure the work gets done. I didn't know how to manage risk. I knew how to collect risk ideas. I didn't understand the kind of benefits of following a prescribed framework and how I should feed it back. So when it comes to project management, it's about making sure that the people who are leading the work, if this is you, have got these skills. Now, by now, kind of 40 minutes into the webinar, and you're in the, kind of starting to deliver some change, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do in order to deliver change. Well, yeah, you have. But there's lots of this stuff that overlaps, right? There's lots of this stuff that's complementary. Being the best of you is that leadership circle. Understanding culture is the culture circle there. It's really then just about understanding the mechanics of project management. And you can do all of these things. You can be whatever you want to be. You've just got to commit to it. You've got to say, yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be. And then really grow into that. And, it's part of being the best of you is never stopping, but also making sure that organizationally that people are committed to and that they recognize that for change to actually stick, there are a bunch of different things that we need to do in a way that helps other people to grow. So it's not just about you. It's about helping other people to be more self-aware. It's about making sure they understand culture. It's about making sure that they understand the different components to project delivery and help them through the life cycle as well. So the project leadership program modules, again, this is on the community. And the reason that I do the three programs is, again, the emphasis is on me helping you deliver this stuff. I wanted it to be as simple and as easy to follow as it possibly could be, so that you get that sense that it's doable. You can do it. And here's some help from someone who's actually done it and tried, failed. And throughout all of the programs, I talk about some of the things that I failed at so that you don't make the same mistakes and to help you. So here's all of those things, which are a mix of leadership, culture, methods with a project delivery context. Now, like I said,